Alright, so I'm going to show you how to do some of these problems from your review. You can check these out, see if you got the right answer. But here, this is number 1, and it's talking about solving unknown sides and angles using either the law of sines or the law of cosines. So if we were looking at the law of sines, it would be sine A over lowercase a equals sine B, or lowercase b equals sine C, or lowercase c. And we know that there's a ratio that exists between these angles, it would be sine times the angle, and these sides. Okay, so we're going to use that for law of sines. But there's only certain cases you can use this one. The law of cosines is I'll show you one aspect of it. But it's kind of like using the Pythagorean theorem. And one example of it would be a squared equals b squared plus c squared minus 2bc cosine of a. Okay, so let me go out a little bit here. So you can kind of see that's the equation that we would use. And we could switch this around, make this b squared, a squared back in here. Then we'd be 2 times ac, cosine of b, and so on. We just change these to match whichever one is out here, and these to match whatever's on the inside. Okay, this is our general equation right here. And we can look at each one. We'll do a couple here, and you can see how they're done. And really, we ask ourselves, can we use this one first? Because this is the easiest one. And the thing we have to remember is we need to have one of these angles and a side if we're going to use the law of sines. If we don't have an angle with its side, then we can't use it. We'll use it later in the process, but we start with the law of cosines then. So this first one here, we have this triangle ABC. It has this angle A, 155, and we have some sides. Looks like side C is 10 and B is 9. We could put them up here. C is 10, one across, B is 9. We don't know what A is. We can solve for it here. And then we don't know what the angles are either. And if we solve one of these angles, we can always just 180 minus whatever that angle is, and we know what the unknown angle is. Okay, so we have this one here. We don't have an angle on the side matching up, so we're going to go to this one right here. So let me just write it in under here. So a squared equals b squared plus c squared minus 2, it's going to be these two, bc times cosine of a. Okay, then we just fill in. So we're trying to figure out this lowercase a side, so we're going to leave that. Then b would be this right here, it's 9 squared, plus c, so that's 10 squared. And then minus 2, we plug in whatever the lowercase b is, that's 9, 2 times 9. And then c is equal to 10. And then the cosine of 155. Okay. So we have everything but a squared, and that's perfect. That's what we want. So then what we can then do is just do our work now. So a squared, 9 squared is 81, 10 squared is 100, so we'll just make that 181. And it's going to be minus all this stuff. So minus 2 times 9 is 18 times 10 minus 180 times the cosine of 155. Let's just do that really quick on our calculator. So we're just going to put in 155 cosine. We get negative point. I'll just put that in here. Negative 0.9. And I'm not going to put the whole thing in, but instead I'm going to multiply this out, and then I'll add it in here. Okay, so we'll rewrite it one more time. A squared is 180 times our answer. Is that on here? Now let's see if I can find it. It's a new calculator I got here. I left mine at home. Where are we? Let's have to do it again. So I'll do 155 cosine times 180. It's going to give us a negative number, right? But we're multiplying it also by a negative, so then this is going to be a positive. 181 plus 163. Okay, and then we can just really add it through, right? So, we're going to just use 163 here. So 180 plus 163, 343, and then a squared equals 343, and then we just do the square root. and A will be just its square root, 18.5. It's A. Okay, we look at our triangle. It's always good to look at it. That is our longest side, right? It kind of makes sense if that's what it is. And then we'll just check and make sure the next part of this problem, where we figure out the other angles, where we now use law of sines, is correct as well. So the next thing we're going to go back to that law of sines, and we figured out an angle now and a side. So we can go the sine of A, which is the sine of 155 over 18.5, and then we're just going to do for B, the sine of B over B, which is 9. So then we would just do 9 times the sine of 155 divided by 18.5. Let's do that. So 155 sine times 9 divided by 108.5. I get that. And then I'm going to do the inverse sine to figure out the angles. So second sine 11.9. So that's angle B, uppercase B, right? So then I know, we'll just round this to 12, right? And then we can just do the figuring out the rest of the angles, because we know the whole thing is 180, so we just go 180 minus 155 minus 12 equals 13. Makes sense too, they're about the same length. This is this long one, and if you add them all together, this should be 180. So that's kind of how you do that. You use your law of cosines if you don't have a side and an angle matched up. Then you use your law of sines to figure out, once you have a side and an angle matched up, then solve for your other angles, the next angle, and then solve for the last angle just by 180 minus whatever the first two angles are. Okay, that's that one. That's a law of sine and law of cosines and sines, and that's how you do it.